Today, we have a different Get Out and Garden video for you. Some of you may recognise this amazing garden behind me. We've come up to sunny Queensland to meet with YouTube sensation Mark Valencia from Self-Sufficient Me, and I'm super excited that he's going to give us a tour around his amazing edible garden.
G'day, Ben.
Hey Mark, how are you, mate?
Yeah, good, mate.
Mate, this place is incredible. How many raised garden beds do you have here?
Oh, about 50 raised garden beds, about 600 metres square. We've got about 140 fruit trees in our orchard around the property, and also around about an acre of free ranging area for our chickens. So do you want to have a look around?
Mate, I'd love to. Let's get into it.
Come through here. That's a honey murcot mandarin behind us.
Yeah.
Really sweet mandarin, hard to peel, but still nice to juice and eat. Yeah. And in the middle here, it looks a bit odd to have it among fruit trees, but this is galangal. You know, in Thai cooking, have a smell of it. Smell that.
Yeah, it's nice, isn't it?
The root is like ginger, but it's a really hard ginger, and they use it primarily in Thai cooking.
Yep.
And maybe Middle Eastern as well, I'm not sure, but I know it's in Thai. And the thing is, it's one of those spices that you don't know it's in there, but you know if it's not in there, because it just adds that extra bit of punch to a Thai dish.
I'll be honest, I'm totally unfamiliar with this, so yeah.
I had it in the veggie garden, and it grew so big, it started shading everything out. So I said, bugger, I pulled you out and put him in the orchard. And I've got it scattered around the place, so we've got plenty of it whenever we need it.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah. This is another grapefruit, just a small one. It's a Rio. It produces a red core. Quite nice, similar to the marsh in taste. So you can see how close I plant the fruit trees. It's a fruit forest, really, I like to call it.
Yeah.
And it's because I just want to cover all the ground I possibly can. It suppresses the grass and the weeds, and it just allows you to fit more fruit trees into a small space.
It's incredible. So in my learning, we were always told airflow, 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 you know, like don't plant too close, but you don't seem to have any problems with airflow or fungal disease in here, so.
No, you'll get a little bit of sooty mould on some of the citrus, you'll see. Even a bit of gall wasp, you'll see. Some of these aren't perfect. A lot of our citrus aren't perfect, but what you'll also see is they're producing a lot of fruit, they're growing healthy. So just because they look a little bit crappy, it's not a real drama for us.
Oh mate, you have your own little ecosystem here. So you've got birds and all the beneficial pests, and I mean, they're doing their work for you, obviously. So no sprays, I'm all for that.
This is a star fruit tree. There's no fruit on it at this stage, but that'll start to arc up in late spring. Behind me here is a Tahitian lime, which usually always has fruit on it. But there's a few on the ground.
I think that is probably the biggest Tahitian lime I've ever seen.
And I've cut it back. I've cut it back as well. It is huge, isn't it? It's probably 12, 13 years old.
Yeah.
And it pretty much produces fruit for 9 months of the year.
Yeah.
So you've always got plenty of lime
for your gin.
Yeah, exactly. Check out the flowers on this Meyer lemon. Yeah. It's just massive, isn't it?
It's huge. You know, it's funny that the Meyer lemon's doing so well here. I live in a cooler climate, and Meyer lemons are what we plant down there because the Eurekas don't do so well in the cooler climate.
Yeah.
But up here in Queensland, and look at it, it's killing it.
And the bees are loving it. Swarming with bees. You can see the honeybees and the native bees. And here's one of my favourite oranges. It's a Valencia.
And why do you like that, Mark?
I don't know. Look, there's a real practical reason why I love it. And the simple reason is it stays on the tree.
Yeah. And
I didn't know this until I started growing them. But the Washington orange that you'll see in a minute, and the one we walked past, which was a Lane's Late Navel, they will fall from the tree a lot quicker, especially after spring approaches here in this area, because we primarily have our citrus ripen through winter in the subtropical climate.
Yep.
And so in spring when it starts to warm up, the fruits start dropping. But the Valencia orange, it just holds on.
Yeah.
And so we can consume the oranges from the other trees and get rid of them and still have this crop left on there even way into summer.
So how old would this be? This Valencia orange, like, were these all planted at a similar time?
Yeah, most of these larger ones are around probably 13, 14 years.
Yep.
Yeah. Here's something I think you're going to find interesting, Ben. This is a Helena olive tree. Now, first of all, check out my pruning. See how it's got all the trunks coming out?
Yeah.
Amateur me versus horticulturalist. What I thought was, like 15 years ago, would be a good idea if I made the tree just shoot different branches so I could keep it small but get more sort of leaves, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
A smaller tree but more bushier rather than a tree with, you know, olives and that on it. It's academic now anyway because the recent rain and the floods killed it because it just kept on raining and obviously it just
It's a good point
didn't
though.
work. But what do you think of that?
Oh, mate, I understand your thinking. That is, you know, it's not crazy that process, but yeah, I mean, it's obviously not the most ideal way to do it. You want a single leader and then it to branch
and then
out.
bush it out.
Yeah.
So you're being kind. I
a
stuffed
little.
it up. Yeah.
But I see where your head went, and if you don't know, you don't know. There's, I mean, horticulture's full of mistakes. I'm sure you've made plenty. I've made plenty. Everyone's going to continue to make plenty every day. You know, so that. I mean, if it was shooting like that, you probably thought that's what it was supposed to do, maybe. So,
Yeah. But it didn't work out. Anyway, let's go across to this tree here.
Yep.
This is a Barbados cherry. It produces like a cherry-like fruit. It's red. It's not in fruit at the moment, but I nearly lost it. It got a citrus borer in the stem.
Yeah.
And have you seen them?
Yeah.
They're bloody destructive.
Yeah, they do. And the only way to get rid of it is basically cut the limb off and get rid of it.
That's what I did.
Yeah.
So I've done the right thing there.
Yeah.
So I couldn't even find the grub.
Yeah.
But it might have been gone by then or whatever, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I cut it right back and I thought it was going to die. And in about probably 2 years, it's come back, but it was just practically a stump. And it's like it doesn't have one seed, it has several seeds.
Yeah.
And it's quite tart, but it's a really nice, refreshing fruit.
So what's your process with choosing fruit trees? Like why a Barbados cherry? Like to be honest, I'm not familiar with it at all, and I just wonder why you chose that, or did you see it somewhere, or?
Yeah, I just love collecting odd and new fruit trees and plants and vegetables. I like trying new things.
Do you go to nursery and come home with a car full of plants?
Yeah, I do. Or now, you shop online and you can get all sorts of exotics that grow all around the world. And now, I see it and I want it. And if it's like, even we're getting so good at grafting plants now and breeding plants that a lot of the stone fruits that you couldn't typically grow here in a subtropical climate or a warmer climate can be now grown here because they've lowered the chill factor and you can now get fruit off these things.
Yeah.
So there's just a plethora of different fruit trees, thousands of them that you can choose. I just don't have enough space. This apple tree here, this is a question I was going to ask you too, or what you thought about it. I grew that from seed.
Yep.
And you can see I've got a couple of nets on there.
Yep.
Because it did fruit and the apples weren't too bad, but they weren't very good.
A lot of stuff grown from seed isn't quite as good as sort of the bought stuff, unfortunately. And it takes a lot longer too. I'm sure that. How old would this one be?
Well, probably 3-4 years.
Yeah. That's incredibly quick, actually. I mean, there's these limbs that have to all come off as well, so it can throw a lot of energy into the stuff you leave. Like I would cut that back really hard.
So, do you think cutting it right back and then grafting on some decent apple onto it would work?
That could work, yeah. Yeah, I'd be more inclined to cut it back, leave a canopy at the top, and give it a really good season, give it a good feed, and just see what it produces when it's not throwing energy into unnecessary.
Let's see if the fruit is okay.
Yeah, like give it another season, and we've had a really wet season too, so that should help with the fruit as well. So it just give it another chance, and if not, the grafting might be a great idea. That little experiment. Yeah,
right, cool. Yeah, so we've got a lot of citrus, but we also have some stone fruit, which isn't typically what you'd grow in a subtropical or warmer climate. But you can get a lot of these low chill varieties now, and this one here is a angel peach, and it's called angel because it has this halo-like flat peach that's really good for lunch boxes.
It is flat,
and
isn't
our
it?
boys grew up on them. They're only small at the moment. They'll get about 3-4 inches across, but they'll only be about an inch wide.
Yeah, right.
Fit in a lunchbox nicely, easy to eat, and they actually taste really nice. This tree here, I've had to prune back, you can see severely, and you've got a lot of bottom growth there that I need to cut off. But the reason why I pruned it back was it was just getting enormous and it was filling up this whole space. And the problem with a backyard fruit tree like this is attracted, like fruit flies just love stone fruit here in Queensland. So I really do need to bag or net the tree and the fruit. And if you get it way too big, you can't bag or net the tree, and the fruit just all get full of maggots.
Yeah.
So that's why I've cut it back and keeping it at a manageable height.
Well, they respond really well to a hard cutback anyway, so it's incredible. It's like they need it every now and then. So,
oh, do they?
Yeah. It's actually like a refresher for it. So and get some branches out of the centre too, so we get some airflow. And I mean, it's obviously producing. They're everywhere.
So I want to show you some dragon fruit, but before we get there, have a look at these two. This is a pepper bush, and primarily a tropical tree or a tropical vine. But I don't know if you can see. No, yeah, you can. See these little. They're pepper. What do you call them?
Corns.
Peppercorns. Yeah. So I've been growing this for a long time. It's got a bunch of ants in there, and that's probably protecting it from aphids and all that. But you've had to net it because the possums love the leaves. But as it grows and gets bigger, I'm going to remove the net so it can survive on its own, and a bit of nibbling won't matter. Yeah. But you can really smell the pepper.
You can.
Smell
Yeah, I can. Yeah.
You can even just standing here, I can smell the pepper coming off it. That's that scent. But I'm keen to get it to a size where we can harvest our own pepper and dry it out and have our own, grinding over a steak.
I wonder whether the pepper is a deterrent to any sort of wildlife or.
Well, it's not the possums.
No.
But it might be to other things.
Yeah. So because pepper is used sometimes to deter things. So maybe not directly from the plant though. Yeah.
And this here is a coffee tree.
Yeah.
And you can see the berries have dried out now, but we haven't yet, but one day I'm going to ferment the berries and make our own coffee beans.
Yeah.
Even if we're not grinding it up for a coffee, because we probably won't, because it won't be really, you won't be getting enough, and it'd be too cumbersome to grind your own coffee for a few cups.
Yeah.
But what you could do is ferment them, make the coffee bean, and then coat them in chocolate and give them away as gifts.
Yeah.
A little bag of chocolate coated coffee.
They wouldn't get out of my house as gifts.
But so that's the idea of growing coffee. But you can see they're all dried up.
Self-caffeinated meat.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Okay, let's come through to the dragon fruit. Hey, Ben, have you seen one of these dragon fruits?
I don't think I have.
This is a yellow variety. Like most of the dragon fruits you're probably familiar with, they don't have the spines on them, but this one here does. And they're also a smaller variety of dragon fruit, but they are the most full of flavour dragon fruit, in my opinion. I can get the really big, like crimson, juicy ones, but they're nowhere near as flavourful as these yellow ones. The problem is that they have the thorns on them, and when they're green, you don't want to mess with that.
No.
The good thing is, and animals don't know this, but humans do, when they ripen to a yellow like this, the spines are easily brushed off with just a dustpan brush.
Yeah.
They just come off really easily, and then you can twist the fruit off and obviously eat it. So that's the tricky thing about it. But that's the good thing, is it's got a natural pest resistance.
Yeah. So how do you know when they're completely ripe? So the colour, is it just purely by the colour, or do they have a feel? Or?
Yeah, no, exactly. It's the colour. When they turn yellow, then you know they're ripe to pick, and also the spines come off a lot easier.
Yep.
When they're green like that, you can't get the spines off them, and you can't obviously pick them, but they're obviously not right to eat anyway.
Yeah, they're a gnarly looking thing. They why an animal would want to go near it anyway, I don't know.
Well, most people grow dragon fruit on a single post, and then they let it branch out. I tried something different. I tried growing it on some trellising material, and it's working pretty well. It looks a little bit, I suppose, messy, and it's not as uniform, but it's still doing the trick, and it was fairly cheap, and I just knocked it up in a few hours.
Yeah. Works, it works.
Yeah, mate. Yeah. And the last one I want to show you, Ben, is this Glen mango here. It's starting to flower, and they'll typically ripen in around summertime, so another 3 months at least.
Mangoes are something, I grew up as a kid loving mangoes, but I've always lived in a cold climate, so I've never been able to grow mangoes. And it's something that I would love to somehow one day have a big enough hot house that I can grow a whole mango tree inside. But yeah, I think you're very lucky to be able to grow them up here.
Mate, everyone loves mangoes, including every critter you can imagine.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So we do have to be careful to net them or bag the fruit.
Yeah.
And I often use a insect mesh, like a fiberglass insect mesh, because then it stops the possums from ripping through a standard bag.
Yep.
Or you net the whole thing. And again, I've got to try to keep these at a manageable height. And this is getting a little bit too big, but I'll prune it back. It won't affect it too much. And then be able to net the whole thing or bag branches so that the critters don't get into it. But yeah, it's nothing better than having a fresh mango from your own backyard.
Mate, I'm very jealous of that. That would be incredible.
And they're not bad eaten. Have you had like Thai salads or Asian salads? Green? Yeah. So that's the other way. If you can't bag them or whatever, you can still eat them green and get your share before the possums or the fruit bats get to them.
Mate, very jealous.
Yeah. So how about we go down and visit the chickens?
Perfect.
Before we go back to the other side.
Let's do it.
Okay, cool. Well, Ben, this is our chicken area. We used to call it Chicken Park. I had a big sign up, but that's all decayed and gone now. But it is kind of a chicken park. It's about an acre of chicken free-ranging area. We've surrounded it with some electrical tape, 3 lines, so the foxes can't either jump or dig under or climb. They get hit by something.
Yeah.
Foxes, wild dogs, and even big goannas now can't get in here.
Yeah, mate, it is a huge area. Some people will be dreamed to even live on an acre, and you've got chickens, chickens running the show.
It's all theirs. You might have a look. I'll show you our compost ring.
Yep.
So this here is just a recycled plastic ring, and in here we throw our kitchen scraps, and she's already thinking that I'm gonna throw something in here. They've got their own food, but this is a supplementary food, and they actually prefer this a lot of the time to their own grains.
Look at that.
And yeah, you can see what it turns into, this beautiful compost.
Smells beautiful.
So it's a mixture of just decaying kitchen scraps, what they haven't eaten, and they just keep mixing it up, like lettuce and tomatoes and offcuts and all that. And also their bedding that gets old and we replace it, we put it in here, and of course their poop.
Yep.
So that goes in here as well, and all that just breaks down over time. The chickens jump into the ring, they're constantly scratching and turning it over, and it helps to break it down. And this is probably one of the best things I've done in our chicken area, because now I can just, when I need some extra fertile compost, I just grab a few handfuls or a bucket load of this and put it up into the garden beds.
I've not this set up at my place, but I have a compost bin, and I've done little experiments where I plant, say a lettuce, for example, with a handful of compost and one without. And the growth difference is phenomenal. Like the one with just the compost, no other fertilizers, is doubled in size. So this stuff is gold. Yeah.
Well, that's the horticulturalist side of you coming out, that experimentation type thing. And
Mate, I love it.
It doesn't surprise me that grew better. But it's, I don't think it's just the nutrients. I think it's also the composition of it and the micro, what do you
the
call
microbes
it?
in the soil.
Even the microbial fungi.
It's all in there, and it's the structure of the soil as well. Like it's perfect. This is, if everyone at home could have this, they'd have success. Is what they say. When gardeners have success, they want to garden more. So if they have this, they'll have more success and they'll garden more. So.
And the good thing is the chickens do it.
Yeah, that's right.
Nature does it.
How many chickens are here in total?
So we've only got 11 chickens. So there's a fair bit of area for them. I'm going to get some more because I just love them anyway. But 11's plenty for us. They, we get a dozen eggs every couple of days. So we don't run out of eggs.
No.
We're all constantly pickling them and making egg things, but luckily we all love eggs. So
no roosters?
No roosters. I have had roosters in the past, but the thing is, I got fed up with bending over and having 2 feet planted into my backside every time I was out here. So I thought, no more roosters.
We're probably far enough away from the house for them not to wake you as well, though.
Yeah, you could. You can have them with no problems, but I just didn't like getting smashed all the time. But let's come in and get some eggs.
Oh, heaps of eggs.
Like I said, I didn't collect them yesterday.
Look at this.
So that's what they've laid in the 2 days. Well, less than that. I didn't collect them yesterday, I don't think.
Look at that. So, breakfast, lunch and dinner.
Yeah, there you go. So they're the eggs. Why don't we go up and have a look on the right-hand side at the avocado trees? I just want to show you them.
Yeah, for sure.
Can you hold these, Ben?
No problems.
Have you got enough hands?
I do not.
Don't drop them.
How much per egg?
Well, I think we worked out for this whole setup, what was it, about $700 an egg?
I'll tread carefully.
Thanks, mate. All right, so this is where I planted the avocados. Now, we have a real problem with trying to grow avocados on our property because of the clay soil. And I've tried several times and it hasn't worked. So the only thing that I thought we could do was maybe mound up the soil and see if that would help. And it seems to be working quite well. They're still coming out of winter at the moment, but as the weather warms up, they're going to start perking up again because, they are a subtropical, tropical fruit.
They're quite high out of the ground, aren't they? That's a huge amount of soil. Was that brought in or was that from on site?
Well, I bought in a lot of good organic soil. That was actually, good garden soil that they had made with quite a lot of love. Fairly expensive stuff. But underneath is a bit of normal, good granite free draining stuff. Because the last thing I want is that taproot to get down and hit the clay soil. As soon as that happens, they're cactus here on our property because it gets that root, disease, what's it called?
Phytophthora.
Phytophthora.
Yeah.
Say that 5 times real fast. So that's the problem. And you can see it's covered with weeds and grass, and there's even one big weed there. That's a turkey berry. That's actually an eggplant, believe it or not. It's called a pea eggplant. You can eat the berries from it. But I've let the weeds and everything grow because seeing that it was just mounded up soil, I didn't want it to just erode away. And if I glyphosated or dug all these weeds and grasses out, there'd be nothing to hold the soil together. And so I just want the avocados to grow first, get a good root structure, and then we should be able to cut back these weeds and grasses a little bit more, and it should hold together nicely, and hopefully they'll grow well. We've got some fruit from them already. I've only been in the ground maybe a year and a half, 2 years if maximum, and we've already got probably 10 fruit from them.
Yeah.
And they're beautiful.
How do you find the with the nutrients being a big mound of soil, the nutrients could leach away quite easily, and also the weeds are obviously hungry things as well, so they're taking a lot out of the soil. So do you need extra feed in with them, or you haven't yet? Or
Yeah, I haven't yet, but well, I do. Like coming into spring now that they're flowering, what I'll do is I'll get some chicken manure, some nice high nitrogen thing. They're looking a little bit, lean on the nitrogen. They're looking a bit pale. The avocado should have a nice dark green leaf.
Yep.
So I'll probably get some extra nitrogen fertilizer in it, some maybe cow manure as well. And I'll then put a bit of mulch around the trees and probably give them a bit of a water, some more regular water, but we've had plenty.
yeah.
But it wouldn't hurt to give them some good nutrient-rich water from our own EnviroCycle system.
Yep.
And just leave the hose on there for a few weeks, and then it should green them up and give them a good start coming into summer.
It's a good lesson for people that when you're taught what to do, it's to clear the base of fruit trees, mulch, feed, don't let any weeds or grass come in. But if you do have weeds or grass, they still thrive. Like it's not a necessity. It's just probably a thing that can help, but not a necessity. So.
Yeah, I think of avocados coming from the forest.
Yeah.
They're a forest tree,
Yeah.
so they've had to compete with other forest and undergrowth and all that. So for me, it just seems like a logical way to grow them like they are growing in a forest. They've got the shade from these trees here that helps them when it gets really hot, especially the young avocado trees before they mature and they get stronger. But also the undergrowth, I don't see it as a problem like you're saying.
Yeah, no, well, it's clearly working, so well done.
Cheers.
Yeah.
Well, let's have a look at the veggie garden. You want to start from the bottom?
Yeah, let's go.
Have a look at the banana trees.
Yeah.
So these banana trees, I found them behind our kids' school,
Yeah.
and I didn't realise they grew so tall. That's probably why they were discarded, because they were just small.
Yeah.
So I brought them back home, and they produced fantastic bananas, like the ladyfingers, but you can see how tall they are. So I'm transitioning away from them to the smaller banana trees, the dwarf ones.
Yeah.
They grow about maximum 3 metres high, so that at least I don't have to climb up a big ladder to bag them,
Yeah.
to protect them from the critters, the flying bats and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how long does it take to get? How long ago was that? Because they look really established to me and like quite thick at the base.
Yeah, I probably did plant them about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be about that. It was the boys' primary school.
Yeah.
It was just a vacant lot behind it, and I spied them there and amongst the weeds and the grass, and I thought, free banana trees.
Yeah.
So I grabbed them. But yeah, they do produce good bananas, but too big. And the other thing that I like about them is the sun comes over this way from west to east, obviously. Actually, rises in the east and sets in the west, but you get the west in a harsh sun.
Yeah.
And I've positioned my compost piles here,
Yeah.
compost space, and so those banana trees are going to give a bit of shade to those compost piles as well. It's not a biggie, but it's just a small thing that helps when you're composting down stuff, and just that little bit of extra shade there, but also they're back at the end of the veggie garden, so they're not shading out the rest of
Yeah.
it.
There's a nice visual from the house too, having the bananas at the back of the sort
Yeah,
of
they are a
bookends it.
beautiful plant.
Yeah.
I keep calling them a banana tree, but they actually are a plant.
Yeah.
So,
Did you hear that rustle?
Russell.
Might have been a crow.
That's terrible. But I like it.
Yeah.
I like it. I love my dad.
Russell Crowe. Don't you think he looks like Russell Crowe? Look at him. Gladiator.
Then coming up, some sweet potato in this. This one's bare. I don't know. We might be doing a garden demo in another video in this one.
Oh, this one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think? Or we could maybe do one up here, but we'll have a look.
You
later.
tell me. You're the expert in the
Well,
raised beds.
we could have we'll have a choose, but this will be our garden off?
Garden off, yeah.
Yeah. Our garden bed off. But
I think you
anyway.
might touch me up.
don't think so. But yeah, that's just resting at the moment anyway.
Yeah. Going into the resting, what's your process with that? Because all your raised beds are so full, and every video I see on YouTube, they just seem so packed. So is that part of the reason you want new beds, because you need some downtime in some of your beds, or?
Yeah, that's a good point. That is not necessarily to grow more, but yeah, you'll have more time to rest those beds in between. Because if you just continually grow, as you know this, you continually grow, you're taking out all these nutrients and even soil, because you're harvesting, and every time you pull out a plant, you're removing things from the garden, not just nutrients. So it's quite taxing, and it's good to have a big enough garden to be able to rotate that through and then leave a bed rest. Like this one here had a few weeds in it the other day, but I've cleaned it up. But essentially, it hasn't had anything really growing in it for a good 6 months.
Yeah.
So that's just given that bed time to replenish, and the microbes and the fungi and that to grow again, and then we can plant into it nice and fresh.
Even the disturbance of you're not taking stuff out, even turning the soil disturbs all the microbes and stuff. So it's really good to just let them sit for some time. And although it's probably not good for your eyes to see a bare bed thinking I could plant that out. Yeah.
That's so true. You have to resist that urge.
Yeah, that's right.
And I'm like that. I'd like to fill every bed, but I realise, like you're saying, from a professional standpoint as well, that it's best to rest the beds occasionally, and so that's why a few more beds isn't going to hurt. So there's some sweet potato in this bed. They're ready for harvest.
Yeah.
Actually, there's a rat hole, there's a mouse hole.
Oh no.
Down there.
As long as it's not a snake, no big North Queensland python's going to come and take me away.
But we won't harvest any hay. Do you want to harvest some? It's ready to go.
Let's do it.
See if you can find some.
Yeah, let's see.
And we'll see who gets the biggest one. So I usually rake it apart, find out where it's rooted down, because sometimes that's a clue. Yeah. And sometimes you'll even see the head of them poking out. They can be as deep as a foot, or right up to the surface.
Hey.
Have a look. I think that's the orange. Oh no, that's the purple variety. It's not too bad.
Couldn't resist ourselves, huh?
No. Mate, gardeners just have to get your hands dirty.
Got a few. These guys here, you'd throw those back in?
No, well, you can eat those because they're nice and tender and small.
Yeah.
That's fine. You're doing a lot better than I'm doing.
I'm hungry.
What?
I think I've hit a little honey pot over here.
So have I. I've been really quiet. That's There's one.
Winner, chicken dinner.
It's not too bad. Doesn't look like a good...
No.
It's a bit knobbly, but it's still edible.
Still edible.
Look at this.
Look at that, huh?
Hokey crikey.
Right.
Feel the weight of that, and now some of that snapped off.
Jeez. Well,
that's going to feed a lot of us.
Very good. Well done, mate.
Well, you've done well. I actually prefer the smaller ones because these big ones, they're all right, but they can get a little grainy as they get bigger.
Yep.
But those small ones are always nice and tender and good flesh.
Yeah.
So we've both done pretty well. And I'm refurbishing this asparagus bed because this is one bed that you don't rest. You know, asparagus is a long living thing. It's a plant that is a perennial, but it lives for a good 25 years.
Yep.
But occasionally you might get some crowns that die off. And I was growing ginger in the other side here, but I've decided that I wanted this whole bed to be asparagus, so I've started planting some new plants on that side there.
So with the asparagus, because it is a perennial and it's in there all year round, And they do sit quite high to the top of the soil, don't they?
They do, yeah.
So how do you go about feeding or keeping them fed? Do you do a liquid feed or just compost over the top every now and then? Or?
Yeah, a liquid feed is good if you don't want to smother them too much. But I really do these actually are only just starting to sprout now.
Yep.
But I let them all die back, and then I chop it all up and mulch it all back, and I mulch it back into the bed.
Yep.
Yeah, so I will mulch it fairly deep. So I'll mulch it back when it dies off in our winter, dies off for about 2 months, it's just all brown. I smash it all down and I put it back into the garden bed. Then I'll fertilise, coming into spring,
Yep.
I'll give it a good bunch of fertiliser, maybe even a liquid feed as well, and then I'll top it with some extra mulch, and that just tops the whole bed up, and then it's ready for when it's starting to sprout like now in spring. It's starting to come through and grow as normal. But have you ever tried it raw like this?
Oh, I haven't.
Yeah, so you just snap it off and just have a taste of it. It's like a pea. But,
Very much like a pea.
it's really nice.
I used to fight my mum tooth and nail not to eat this when I was a kid. Look at us now.
Yeah.
No, I noticed your mulch too. You use this on all of your beds. That's obviously a conscious decision. You've chosen that over other mulches.
I do like sugarcane mulch. It's a good type of sustainable mulch from the sugarcane industry and all that. But I will use wood chip as well.
Yep.
And I know wood chip, a lot of people say that it can take a lot of nutrients out of the soil. And that's true, initially it does, but if you leave it long enough and you just watch it that it's not taking too much out at the expense of the plants, and then you can sort of liquid feed if you need to. But I still find that those nutrients eventually go back into the soil anyway.
Well, that's the wood chip. The general rule is you let it sort of sit and decompose for 3 or 4 months before you put it on. It can have a bit of nutrient draw, so it takes from the soil, but it's never a huge amount. Like it is a thing that happens, but yeah, you can get away with it, especially when your beds are so healthy. They've got compost through them. You're fertilising regularly. Like you're not going to notice it as much as if you were to put it down on a garden that was already struggling. Say.
Oh, really?
So yeah, so I mean, I agree. Sugarcane mulch is what I use on veggie gardens because it's so soft as well, so all the seedlings easily push through it, and it also feeds nitrogen back into the soil really quickly. So yeah, it's a great choice.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
This is my grow tunnel.
Yep.
This is usually massed with pumpkin vine and everything, but I've cleaned it up a little bit for the start of spring.
You almost hit your head.
Yeah, it's just the perfect height. You might have to be careful. There's some rusty stuff here that'd be nasty on the forehead, that's for sure. So yeah.
Okay, I'll duck down.
But no, at the moment, that side is just going to be refurbished, and I might let the pumpkin vine grow on.
Yep.
But on this side here, we've just got a little bit of celery. That actually self-seeded and came up by itself from a few crops ago. But this dill has self-seeded as well.
So when you see something self-seed like that, do you...
I try to
That's
leave
strong,
it.
isn't it? Yeah. That's very strong.
I try to leave it grow in situ because I often find that self-seeded plants just grow better.
Yeah.
Because they naturally wanted to come up there, and these are growing really nicely. But it's just an easy way of growing.
Well, and companion planting is a method that people try and use to stop pests and disease. And they say that to have different textured foliages confuses the insects a bit.
Is that right?
Yeah, so it's probably doing you a favour without you even realising.
Well, yeah, there's probably one of the reasons why we don't ever spray in the garden.
Yeah.
It could be one of those reasons of confusion for pests.
Yeah, it's a weird way to look at it, but it's a bit obviously working. They don't look like they've got anything.
It actually makes sense.
Yeah. Because a lot of insects only see black and white as well, so it's all about shapes and So when they say when you're planting in straight lines, the insects go, oh yeah, dinner, and they just go and go straight through that line. So
and also abundance.
Yeah.
Like they get attracted, like there's too much in nature. We need to carve that up and reduce that because it's too much, whatever. Yeah, but here, well, speaking of companion food-wise, for this dill, I decided to plant some cucumbers in here. They're only young at the moment. I grew them from seed, and they'll climb up this trellis for this spring, and they'll wither probably midsummer.
Yep.
But at least we'll get a couple of good crops, well, you know, a good enough yield out of them, hopefully. You can see they're growing fairly nicely, and I'll also preserve this dill or dry it out if we haven't got any left fresh to complement the pickled cucumbers.
Growing over an archway like this with cucumbers is such a great idea. It's like you're doubling or tripling your surface area.
Yeah.
When with just a frame. So a lot of people don't have the space to do this, but if you can, then do it, because you're tripling your space for no more land. So yeah, it's a great idea.
Cheers. Have you ever grown tree lettuce?
I've never even heard of tree lettuce.
This is it here. Tree lettuce. It actually grows about 1 metre tall, and I haven't grown it either, except for this. This is my first season growing it. What do you think of the taste of it? I'd be interested to hear.
It's a bit bitter at the end, isn't it?
Yeah, it is at the end, isn't it? But it reminds me a little bit of that Italian lettuce, the really curly one, or radicchio. Earlier on, it's actually quite mild. It's only because it's starting to grow now as a tree.
Yeah, so how big does it get?
Well, it can get about 1 metre high.
Yeah, right.
And so the older it gets, yes, the more bitter the leaves get. But we've been eating these leaves now for probably 5-6 weeks.
Yeah.
And yes, they are starting to get a bit bitter, but earlier on they're like a butter crunch.
Yeah.
They're quite nice.
Yeah.
But then what you do is you let that grow out, maybe feed a lot of these excess leaves to the chickens, and then you can start harvesting the stem and using that in stir fries and cooking and stews and all that. So you can pretty much let the plant grow on, whereas other lettuces will go to seed really quickly once it starts to get a bit old. This one here keeps growing on, and you can still keep harvesting it.
Mate, the things you learn, hey?
Well, I only found that out because the editor of my website, Celia, she pointed them out to me, and she asked me that question that I asked you: have you ever grown tree lettuce?
Yeah.
And it's Celtis is the other name for it. And I said, what?
Yeah.
And see, these are the things, I felt like I was living under a rock, and she looked at me sideways and thinking, how could you not know this? And there are so many things, you know, you think you know everything about gardening, but you just really only know just that much.
Mate, I feel like a fish out of water up here, coming into the tropical North Queensland. I'm a cool climate gardener, so I feel like it's a school day for me too. So always learning, mate. Yeah.
Well, here's some leeks, and I've planted these leeks around the base of this tomato bush, and the tomato plant is growing up. And then I realised that I wanted to keep it growing, but it was going to fall and break all the branches. So I put this PVC pipe. It's really budgy, but I put this PVC pipe around it so that when the branches fall over, they're just going to have a natural curve to them and they won't snap. And we'll see how it goes. I'm always experimenting.
Mate, the tomatoes, they don't have eyes. They can't see what's going on.
Yeah. But so that's what that construction is.
But how do you go about irrigating? Because I imagine it gets incredibly hot up here. It's a dry area. There's a bit of concrete here, a bit of sort of
Reflective heat.
hot surfaces. So imagine, and they do dry out, like the walls of the beds. So do you put big sprinklers up? Do you have irrigation in the beds?
Sometimes I'll put up one large impact sprinkler on the top of that, or in the middle, and I'll let that just impact around. I'll put it on a timer or something if it's a really hot day, and that waters most of the garden. But you know, I did have every bed irrigated. There's some of it here. You can see some of the old pipes. Then they would come up. So I've got it all set. Every bed can be irrigated properly, but I found that I just wasn't using it, and I couldn't be. And if you put it on a timer, sometimes it'd overwater, sometimes under. And I really found that I love coming out sort of every morning wherever I can, and hand watering. It's just a therapy for me. It's also a good chance to check out the garden, pull a few weeds, keep out, you know, have a look for pests and all that type of thing.
That's a good point, actually, coming out in the morning, because a lot of people don't know when the best time to water is, but the morning is definitely the best time. It stops a lot of fungal diseases. You don't have it sit overnight on the leaves. The daytime can help take some of the water out of the plant. So if you're ever going to do watering, do it in the morning if you can. So
yeah, and in a hot climate, giving the plants a good drink before it heats up. Is a good idea as well.
And in the middle of the day, it can scorch the plant too by the water sitting on the foliage. So with the beds as well, I had a question about when you put in a new bed in, what do you put at the base? Do you fill the whole bed with nice compost and soil, or do you put branches or sticks or rubble in the base? Or
I'll typically do a hugelkultur. That's mound culture from the old German days, where the medieval times they used to mound up the soil, and to build that soil they would put in logs and sticks and debris and leaves. They'd create this sort of sponge-like area underneath the soil, so then they'd fill the top with topsoil, and then they'd grow on top of that, and that sponge underneath would form all sorts of microbes and
as it breaks down.
It breaks down, and also can keep moisture in and water retention for the roots of the plants that grow on top of it. And so I have that same principle. I'll fill the bottom 3/4 of the bed with anything that I've got, any logs and all types of organic material, and then I'll put some soil on top. And it saves on soil. Yes, it does sink over time, but all beds do compact and sink anyway.
Yeah.
And so it's just a matter of just constantly topping up those beds as you go and as you're growing, and that's pretty much it.
It's a great way to do it. It's cheaper. It's not very often you get a cheaper way to do something gives a better way to do it, and that's just one of them. So what's this you've got over the strawberries here, Mark?
Well, this is a bit of gypsum, gypsum sand.
Yep.
And the strawberries were an overflow. I had plenty of strawberries sort of coming out of these beds here, and they were runners, and so I just chucked them in here. And I previously put in a whole heap of cow manure, but I put too much in, and it made the bed really heavy, and nothing much would grow in it. I'm surprised that the strawberries are actually growing okay. So I decided to put some gypsum in, just so that it could break down that clay-like soil and aerate it out a little bit. My confliction is, of course, with the strawberries, you don't want to would that sweeten the soil up?
It does sweeten it a little bit, but the strawberries don't like an alkaline soil. So they want the soil to be a little bit acidic, but it depends what base we'll start in with, to be honest. But they look happy. Normally they'll lose their colour if they're not happy pretty quickly, strawberries. So
it might balance it out, you think?
Yeah, I think it will, yeah.
Okay, well, that's cool.
Yeah. And as you know, it helps bring the particles of the compacted soil together and lets air in through the soil, and helps with moisture and nutrients get through.
So a decent move then.
Yeah, good move.
Thank God for that. Well, if I dig down, you can see, well, it's not too bad now, but it was really heavy and thick. That might be a good part of it.
Yeah.
But eventually cow manure does break down and get better if you've ever over cow manured or fertilised the bed. But
that looks quite nice soil to me there.
Oh, well, it looks like it's working then, so that's cool. And next to it here is the mojito mint.
Yeah.
We're going to try some of that.
There's a theme here.
Yeah.
No, it's good to contain mint. It can take over anywhere.
And what's another thing that I find interesting about this crop is, how most of the things we were seeing all die back in winter, and now they're starting to come back in spring.
Yeah.
Mint dies back in summer.
Yeah.
And then it comes back in winter and into spring, and then it dies back completely, and this bed will be dust.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible. But it somehow survives all summer and then comes back when it cools down.
Yeah.
It's the opposite.
It doesn't know that we have mojitos in summer, obviously.
Yeah, no, that's the bad thing. Yeah. But you can always go for that Thai mint as a substitute.
That's always thinking. Yeah. Always thinking.
Yeah, see? Yeah.
No, it's fascinating, actually. I didn't ask you when we were walking around the trees, but when I'm from a cool climate, so we lose our foliage on our trees quite early, and we don't get it back for a little while. So your trees are almost full in foliage now, and back at home they don't even have foliage yet. So what's your downtime with foliage up here?
Yeah, it's a lot shorter, a couple of months.
Yeah, right.
Like the mulberry trees, and we've got some pecans out the front that still haven't got foliage on them yet. They might be starting to bud. And the mulberries, most of them have got their foliage just about back now. Some of them are still looking pretty sparse. But yeah, generally it's not much downtime compared to the southern states.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like we're living in different countries.
Yeah.
It's not too far away.
No, it's not.
Yeah, an hour on a plane and it's like you're in another world.
Yeah. All right, so I've got some dwarf beans here and some kale in the middle. You don't need much trellis for them, so that's why that's such a short trellis, but I don't know, I just had this affinity for growing dwarf beans all of a sudden and decided to put them around the outside and grow some kale in the middle.
You're getting quite artistic.
Yeah, this is quite nice, don't you think?
It's pretty.
And these dwarf beans, like I think there's a yellow French bean and also a green. They're only just starting to flower, but there is a couple of green ones on. They don't take up much space. And the thing that a lot of people ask me is like, Mark, I don't live on an acreage like you.
Yeah.
You know, you grow all this produce because you've got the room. And so I like to do these little experiments just to show people that you can grow in a very small space. This might be a metre by metre. Yeah. And you can still grow quite a lot of produce. These small dwarf bean plants, they'll grow 20 to 30 beans on them, at a time. Yeah. And you can just pick them all off and keep going, and they'll grow for several months. And then a bit of kale in the middle to fill the space. It's a very good and easy cut and come again crop.
That's why I think your page is so well loved. I think there's so many different options out there for people, but people don't know that they can just go and research and find these different options like the smaller beans. But having your channel where you show people this stuff, it's great for them, like that's why people keep coming back to you, I think.
Oh, cheers. Well, that's what I like about Hoselink, because they're a good family business, and I've got my trusty Hoselink pruners.
There you go. They look
just in the old Skyrocket. So it's a good opportunity to cut a bit of kale off, and we'll have that later for dinner.
Beautiful. They look minute in your big hands.
Judo, they're bloody good. So moving forward with my bouquet of kale.
Yeah, you look beautiful.
Oh, thanks, mate. This is an onion. It's a really hardy, I think it's called a raycon. I only just started growing it. Rayco. It's a Rayco onion and hardy multiplying onion, and I know that because I only got 2 plants and it grew in this bunch, like 1 million of these things, and it took me an hour to pull them all apart. Yeah. I pulled them all apart and I had, I reckon, 100, and I planted them all individually in these rows. So these, like this, I don't know. No, there's more than 100 there. I planted them, and they're going to multiply now, and they have a small bulb on them. And onions, you can't grow them through summer here. But you can grow these. And you can also grow Egyptian walking onions, which is another hardy variety. And I grow them as well. But I hadn't grown these before, so I'm keen to see how they go. With a small bulb, you got the onion taste, you got to cut and come again if you want, and it grows at a time of year when we typically can't grow them.
Yeah. And another great thing about the raised garden beds is when you're planting out a mass amount like this, you're not leaning down to the ground and you're back. So there's a lifesaver there too.
Yeah, so true. And on the other side, I'm just following the onion sort of variety. We've got some brown onions here. They won't get as big because I planted them a bit late, but they will mature into summer. They're probably the size of a golf ball or a bit bigger. And then there's some leeks in the middle. They're actually a bush leek. Yep. And then on the other side is a potato onion, which is a bunching onion that it grows a bit like a shallot type thing. And then on the other side here is some garlic chives. And this is a really great substitute for garlic for here, because garlic is such a pain to try to grow in the subtropics. Yeah, right. At least you can get that garlic taste in your dishes because this grows all year round. Yeah. And this bed here is our cabbage bed for this season. Again, as it gets hot, comes into summer, these cabbages will all be gone. We'll harvest them, make sauerkraut out of them and all that. but these are the ones we've harvested earlier, and you can see they're growing back.
Yeah, regrowth already.
And they will grow another 3 or 4 small mini cabbage heads before summer hits, and then they stop growing or start going to seed.
Yeah.
But yeah, it looks a bit messy, but that's because we're obviously eating and harvesting all the time, and a few birds have got into some of the heads here. But yeah, we've got plenty to harvest yet and make, like I said, preserves out of them, or even just the cabbage head itself lasts in the refrigerator in the crisper for a month or so.
Yeah. Are you as obsessive compulsive as me as you choose which crops you put in the beds closest to the house, or is it just timing and what happens happens?
Yeah, no, it's just sort of whatever happens for me.
Yeah.
But that's a good sort of segue into what I wanted to talk about though, because I am going to build some new garden beds, and it's going to be just right outside our back door.
Yeah.
And I want to grow herbs in them primarily because I'm so sick. I mean, I'll still grow herbs around here. I mean, like the mint and everything will stay over there, but it's like in the middle of the night or like it's dark. You don't want to be coming right in the middle of the veggie garden hunting for herbs where you can just want a few things to flavour dinner.
Yeah.
I'd love just to walk down the back and just have it in a few garden beds near the back door.
Yeah.
So I am going to do that.
No, that's what we did a video on composting, and we told people, put your compost bins close to your door, because if it's far away from your door, you're not inclined to take it to the compost. So it's just like, we're creatures of habit. We do what's easiest inherently without even thinking about it. So
that's such a bloody great idea.
Yeah.
And look behind you. That wasn't always there. It took me 10, 12 years to do that. We've got some big bins down the back of the veggie garden that we put a lot of our big stuff in, like banana trunks and all that, and banana leaves. But that is where most of the kitchen compost goes, besides the chickens. You know, we also have a composting area here now, because exactly what you just said, we've finally worked out that it's easier just to walk out the back door and just come to here. And you're going to do that more often.
And I actually like I know it's a weird thing to like the look of, but I like the look of compost bins because I know what they're doing. I know, you know, they're near the veggie garden. They make sense, you know. So
that's a really good point.
Yeah.
This is just a bit of an all sorts here.
Yeah, is it an all sorts because you planted it all sorts, or that's just a lot of self-seeding stuff, or leftovers, or? Yeah,
it's leftovers and just things that I just sort of plunked in there. The bed was spare. For example, these eggplants, these seedlings came up in another spot, and I couldn't bear just sort of burying them back in.
Yeah.
So I've saved them, even though they came up at the wrong time of year through the winter. They'll start to pick up now, hopefully. So I thought, where am I going to put them? I just whack them there. Same with the basil. The basil was at the wrong time of year, and I just decided to plunk them in there. I forget where I got that basil from. And then we've got these Chinese greens here and some lettuce scattered in there. It's sort of an all sort with some zucchini. It's just an all sorts of a bed. That's a Mabuna, I think, a red leaf.
That's beautiful looking. You'd almost use that in a perennial garden.
Yeah, you could, couldn't you? And kale is another thing that looks really nice ornamentally.
Yeah.
In an ornamental garden.
Yeah. And
of course you can get ornamental cabbages and those types of things. I'm sure you've seen them.
Yeah.
They're quite beautiful. But so it's a mixed match of everything in this bed, and for no particular reason. And then here, I actually succession sowed spring onions. Now, you wouldn't think it, except the giveaway is that these have gone to flower, and you can reuse these seeds, and it draws in the bees and also the other pollinating insects. They just love this stuff. But yeah, the reason why these are obviously bigger and gone to flower and these haven't yet is because I sowed the seed for them about 4 weeks earlier. Then I started sowing them, and eventually they're all just catching up. We've also cut back a lot of these and they've regrown. So it's quite amazing how fast these things grow.
You can hardly tell much difference there, can't you?
No.
And it's a great point about letting things go to seed and to flower to bring the insects and the bees in. But we so naturally want to rip out stuff as soon as it goes to seed. But if you're not planning on using that bed for a little while, why not just let the plant go to seed and flower and let all the insects come in and enjoy them?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And that bed there,
perfect example.
Is a perfect example. You've got coriander which is a beautiful pungent herb.
And look at that flower. Like that's gorgeous.
It's
like,
pretty, isn't it?
You know, I'm a perennial gardener mostly, so flowers are what I love, and I just think that's stunning. You know, like why people don't want to leave that in their garden, I'll never know.
Yeah, and I think you're right with the paying back of the pollinators, the bees in the garden. I just love that they're coming in here, harvesting the pollen and enjoying the garden and being part of it. And to me, these flowers, it doesn't look ugly. You got lettuce and mustard going to seed, different types of lettuce and different types of mustards and some mabuna there. That it really does look nice, actually.
Yeah, and it's beneficial. Like it's not doing any harm.
No.
It's all good.
Yeah.
Mate, thank you so much for having us. Your place is incredible. I learn a lot. I'm sure the people at home learn a lot. And it's very generous of you to let us here. So maybe next time I take you down to one of my gardens and show you around.
That'd be great, mate. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Hey, let's go and get a mojito.
Perfect.
Cheers.